So
How's your day going? Either of you.
Good, good.
Good?
Yeah, really good. I've been a little bit nervous about this, so
Oh,
yeah, yeah,
why?
because it's more formal. I mean, it's different than having just a conversation with Kaylee at the bar or in improv.
Do you
So
remember when we recorded a conversation on my phone
yeah,
at the
yeah.
bar? I still have to go back and listen to it.
Oh,
I have
but see, you haven't listened to
I needed the space from it. I wanted it to be
it.
far enough where I was like, wow,
Yeah,
you know.
or I think I was encouraging you to do something. That's what it felt like. Was I encouraging you, or like
Yeah.
look back
You
on
were
something? Yeah.
you were asking me about my creative path and like what I was trying to do.
Kind
I
of
feel
like
like I
what
get
you
that a
guys
lot. What are you trying to do here?
it's,
Like, I don't know. I'm just waiting for the spaghetti to stick to the wall.
Yeah. Yep.
it's,
Yeah.
how long ago was this conversation?
Mm,
The last 6 months.
the last 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was probably around Christmas because it was it when I gave you the cat wine.
Yes, you were dating somebody from our improv 201 class at
Wow,
the
way to put it
time.
out there.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. No, I love that cat. Kitschy. I told you I really like Kitschy.
You gave her a whole cat, like an actual
Oh
cat.
no, it's not a real.
Oh,
Yeah, it's a kitschy real Siamese.
oh, got it,
And
got it.
It's
Siamese
like
are,
a funny wine bottle.
yeah, it's great. It's blue. It's like
Yeah.
a, yeah, yeah. Um, okay. I guess I'm ready.
Yeah.
Get that
Ready?
little sputter of nervousness out.
Okay.
No, you're fine. It's such a casual conversation. Like we haven't had anything be super formal. I'm in a soccer jersey, so it's not a formal conversation. We're not gonna what is Charlie Rose this? We're not gonna Charlie Rose this. No
Well,
dark.
I actually have notes, like in case you guys put me on the spot.
Oh wow. What,
Okay.
what what type of
Just
topics
trying
were
to
you
put her
got
on
in
the spot.
there? Yeah. But yeah, like why don't you introduce yourself, Tammy?
So I'm Tami Canaday, and I'm a playwright from Denver, and I've been writing for a number of years. And traditionally, I've written experimental plays, and I write satire, and also I think as I've gotten older, I'm looking more into kind of emotionally based plays. So I've been doing this for a long time.
What is an emotionally based play?
It's something like a Long Day's Journey into Night, Eugene O'Neill play. But what it is it's a play where you capture the audience's emotions, and they feel it. And I think that's probably the best kind of playwriting, as opposed to just intellectual playwriting, where you're moving people from you know square A to B to make your point,
Sure.
being didactic or something like that. But
Hmm.
that's been kind of a evolution in my
Hmm.
playwriting as I've
Yeah.
gotten older.
Yeah, that sounds pretty cool. And so, but you also have like a interest or a skill experience in comedy as well?
Well, I was talking to actually a playwright friend from Los Angeles, and she's very effervescent and very bubbly. And so I was telling her how shy I was, and she said, "Well, I took improv classes, and I think you should take improv classes, and
Hmm.
that'll help with your shyness." And I don't know if that's true, but I've really enjoyed it, and I'm able to write comedic pieces.
Hmm. Hmm.
And but what I like about improv, and Kaylee can speak to this, is it's for me it's so frightening to have to jump in and just do it in the moment. Whereas a writer, you get to kind of laze around and take time and really ruminate about your writing. So it's quite different from writing,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I think improv is terrifying to me because in my mind, I just want to stand on the wall and like write to what they're doing and the characters they're creating. and then it's like, oh, I have to jump out there, and then like it needs to be coming out of my mouth as like cycling through my brain. I feel like they're getting faster and faster the longer I've watched improv. I'm like, where this talent is just like the
It's out of
Denver.
this world. It's out.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's out of this world. And I also feel like with improv that sometimes I say things that I don't mean to be intentionally funny, but they land as funny. Whereas I feel like sometimes with writing, you're much more intentional, even though there are times where I've written stuff where the audience laughs at certain lines and it's like, what, why, where,
Right.
I don't get it. I don't understand.
Yeah. So Christopher, we also worked together on the 48-hour film
Mhm.
project. We were on the
Mhm.
writing
Oh,
together.
okay. Okay.
And that was really interesting because there were certain lines like, it's me, I'm the lucky duck, and I thought of it as like a passive line. And it's
Sure.
like just the framing and the way that the actress like nailed the line. It was like, it was insane. It's just like the way the words move from the page, out into life, like whether through a play or film. But
So yeah, a lot of times I feel that that's a subconscious writing, if that makes so you're not conscious actually what you've written. Like you don't think that line is that important or that it'll, land in a way. I
Mhm.
mean, because
Yeah.
we can't be like constantly, in my opinion, consciously of everything we write. So we write. So I think a lot of stuff is subconscious, actually.
Dive a
so
little
then
deeper into that. Yeah.
I can blame it on the subconscious. No, that wasn't me. That was my subconscious.
when you say it like that, well, a
Yeah.
lot of times when I read what I've written, I'm like, who wrote that? And then I'm like, I understood maybe the emotion in the moment, because I've been trying in my poetry in the last couple years to, like, when I'm actually sitting in the trenches of my emotions, to express myself in some capacity,
Hmm.
because it feels more raw and authentic, and it feels
Hmm.
like it tends to be more valuable in hindsight, you know.
Oh, that's interesting. Do you think that's with everything, or do you think that's with just certain pieces? Because I think um, I've gone back and looked at what I've written when I was much younger and think, wow, I knew what was happening. And then other times I'm like, oh my God, this really sucks.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, do
Well,
you feel
yes,
that way with
and
your photography, Christopher? I mean, if you look back, yeah.
Yeah, like there's work that I've made. I think I for the most part kind of referenced it on the show, maybe in different ways, but there's work that I've made that in the moment I thought that it was really strong, or whatever. It just like it was hitting the points that I wanted it to hit. And there's like a bunch of different experiences, right? Sometimes I look back at that same work and I'm like, oh, I completely missed. How did I like why did I even think this, And then there's kind of like to your like subconscious comment, there is work that I make that I almost feel like I'm like, especially when I'm doing like work for a client, where it's like very defined, shot list. Because I work for a team where I'm not calling myself the creative director, but there's nobody telling me what photo to make. I can just do whatever I want. And then, when you're working with a client, then it's obviously more defined. And I'll go back and look at some of the client work where I'm thinking I'm just going through the motions, and I'm like,
Hmm.
oh, this
Hmm.
is like actually this is actually good, and it's so there's a bunch. I feel like there's a bunch of like different experiences that you can have.
So that's interesting. Do you think when you're going through the emotions because the stakes aren't as high, if that makes sense, they're still high with your client, but
Yeah,
the stakes aren't
yeah.
as high personally, that kind of opens things up.
Yeah, I think I wonder where I'm at in this like process, because the one thing I will say about being a photographer and being able to just focus on this as a career and as really a medium of expression is sometimes I'm like consciously in a phase, and I'm working on this like massive edit right now, and so there's a lot of going through the motions that I feel like I did in the last week or so. And I think I I don't know where the work actually comes from. I don't know if it's because I feel like the stakes aren't as high or whatever, but I think there's a certain consistency. Same thing with like writing, right? Like there's a certain like pathway, or even when I was saying, oh, maybe we'll talk about narrative. If you think about like, if the way at least I consider narrative is like it's funneling you into an idea, even if not from the initiation, by the time you get to the end, you kind of come to a certain idea. And when I've been looking at this work that felt like I was going through the motion, I was like, no, I was like, we actually were conscious, or actually we actually did have like some defined path that we were going down, and your brain just knows how to start creating those things, like a standard for those things or a foundation for those things. And I think that's like where it is, like laying concrete, right? Like you lay concrete for a foundation, but like you can build whatever house you want on it, right? But like the concrete part is concrete.
Right. But I feel like the foundation isn't always in your control, if that makes sense. So I know I've written, when I first started writing, all my plays were about, a person trying to get out of confinement. And it came from a bunch of different directions. And I could say, well, I'm not going to, write about confinement. But somehow I always ended up writing about confinement. And it wasn't, at first, obviously, there was no intentionality in doing it or recognition that I was doing it. But after writing, for so long, and just like writers, fellow writers, like, there she is again. She's trying to get out of a certain situation. So then my question to you would be, you say that there's a foundation, but is there a foundation that you consistently work with as you take all your photos?
Yeah, and I think that's like kind of where I'm at. The answer is probably yes, but I don't know what that foundation quite is yet. It's there, for sure. But I've found myself in this place with my work where I don't think I really enjoy this. And I know Kaylee and I with another guest have spoke about this in some different way, but like I'm not quite sure. I think the inability to define what this foundational component is to my work, or to my even workflow, my process of creating something, because I can't consciously describe it, I think is making me not appreciate some of my work so much, which it kind of goes back to everything else we were saying. When I look back at it, sometimes I'm like, oh, this is good,
Mm-hmm.
and and so yeah, I don't necessarily struggle with it in a negative way, but it's I feel like I'm currently just in that phase. I don't know if you ever had this moment for yourself where, did you feel like you were ever, or that you were in a phase where you knew you were creating, and you were creating with some sort of purpose and maybe some sort of caliber, right? Because I'm kind of talking about like a caliber of work as well. And but for whatever reason, it's still not fully satisfying you. It's not, you know what I mean? It's like, it's good maybe, but you just don't know like where you go from, like I'm creating like an image, like a box at each time. I don't know how you weigh your work in terms of like, is it per sentence, is it per paragraph, or whatever, how you formulate these thoughts. But for me, it's kind of like frame to frame, if you will. And sometimes it doesn't feel like it's going anywhere, but eventually it does. And I think I'm at this phase where I'm trying to like re-understand like what I'm doing with my work. So it makes me, I don't know, not value it in the way that I should.
So what kicks into gear when you feel like it's going the way it should go? So, I mean, I think as artists,
Mm.
we plateau.
Hmm.
So are you waiting for something to change your perception or your art, if that makes sense? And maybe you're like, no, I'm not waiting for anything. But so here's the question: is your art waiting for something?
No, I think because the way I approach making work is it's just an experience, right? Like you just keep, like, at this point I'm gonna make photographs forever. I would assume that you'd probably be writing for the rest of your life, right?
Right,
So
absolutely.
and so I think it's just taking me to a place, and I will realize I will find some component that I really like. And I think that's what I'm not finding anything new right now. I'm just
Mm-hmm,
digging. I'm gonna
mm-hmm.
hit something. I know that, because I know I'm gonna keep digging. And so when I do see work that does feel good, I mean, it's like the whole recipe or the whole ingredients list of a photo. Like it emotionally resonates well,
Mm-hmm. Right,
artistically,
exactly. Is it interesting? Right.
like
Is
it's
it different?
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't want to continue to make the same old good photo time and time again, right? I want to find a new photo, as much as I can, and be on that journey. Because maybe there's the point where you can't make new photos and you have to learn to appreciate something old, or revisit something old, maybe. I don't know.
I don't know. I have a really hard time revisiting my old work.
Hmm.
Even though, like we were saying, sometimes I'm like, oh, this is pretty good, but I'm really disinterested in
Hmm.
my older work. I have no interest
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
I've moved on from that.
How are you uh how can you define your journey? Like the way I'm defining it is I'm just digging, and I know I'm going to dig forever. I'm going to find some stuff on this dig, and that's just what I want to do. And you're like, where do you feel like you're at in your work? Like, how are you appreciating it? How are you approaching creating new things?
Um, that's a really good question. I think because I'm older and I've been doing this for a while, I have a command of playwriting, if that makes sense. But
Absolutely.
I feel like when I was younger, and you're young, I was so much more willing to be, and Kaylee, I want you to speak to this too, be more experimental because
Hmm.
I didn't know what the limits were,
Yeah,
if that
yeah,
makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
and so I was willing to try all sorts of things, and I was willing to have a lot of failures because I didn't know, if that
Hmm.
makes sense. So it's almost like a outsider art.
Yeah,
If
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and then as I've gotten older and I've had lots of experience, I'm much more in command of playwriting. But I don't know if I have the same brain, the same, youth to be able to do the kind of experimentation that I did
Huh.
at one
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So,
And before you jump in, Kelly, actually you kind of helped me out a little bit. I might answer your question like in pieces throughout this thing.
okay.
But yeah, I don't know that I feel like, and hopefully this will come off like egotistical, but like I feel like in certain ways I've kind of pushed my work very, very hard in certain directions to find the limits that you're talking about. And in certain ways I feel like I have found some limits, but I think that's probably where I'm at is like I feel like I've pushed a lot and I feel like I should have found something, and but I haven't yet. Or I'm not getting that feedback where I feel like I really have. And so it's making me curious, you know what I mean? But it's also like a just that human emotional reality, like it does get tiresome when you're like, where is this? Where is it at? It's kind of like I'm looking all over the place. It's got to be somewhere here. And so yeah, that's what I have to add for now. But
Yeah. Kaylee, what do you think?
Ask
You're
me the
you're
question one
you're
more
on the young side.
on the young
you,
side.
you both are on the young side. So my question is, um, do you feel like that there really aren't any constraints to your poetry? That you can write whatever, however you want, and is that because you're young?
Well, it's interesting in regards to poetry, just because I started reading and writing it at such a young age that
Mm-hmm.
I feel like and I took a lot of poetry classes through like in middle school, high school, college, grad school. And so I think I learned all the rules and like experimented within those confines of like, we want you to do this. And then now I feel like I'm too old to be that rigid. You know what I mean? Like, and it's interesting because sometimes I'll look at like the way I've laid out some poem but I always kind of go back to, I think it was William Blake who wrote
Yeah,
Blasts. Did he write English Blasts? Was it
I don't
somebody?
know.
Somebody in that time period though. And he was doing a lot of things with like font sizes and like more visually,
That
you
would be
know.
Blake. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
And I really liked that idea, and I was also taking visual rhetoric in grad school. So for me, those things kind of became hand in hand. It's like the look of the poem speaks as much in volume as like what the words that are actually written on the page and like the way you space it out in the stanzas. So I feel like an old poet. And maybe that's
Is
what
that
makes
you're an
me
old
kind of like,
soul
I
or
feel
you're an
like I'm
old poet?
fearless about it.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And
so an old poet in a sense, like an old soul, or somebody who's been doing this for years.
like seasoned, very
He
seasoned.
said, yeah,
Like, oh my God, what, like, I love a good Emily Dickinson dash, just like dash, dash, dash everywhere I can.
yeah,
So, but I think in other areas, like, so for instance, film, I, yeah, I feel like I'm just kind of like boldly willing to make the mistakes because I don't know any of the rules.
right,
And that's kind of scary. It's also really interesting that like the youth aspect of it is like you almost have to go blindly at things without understanding the rules it takes to succeed or to get your work out there or whatever. Because
exactly,
like you have to be ignorant enough to keep having the courage to keep showing up. Like,
right,
here
right,
I am. And like,
right,
for some people I think it eventually works out.
yeah. No,
So
I
from
think that's
that aspect,
exactly
I
it.
would say youthful, but
I think, yeah, I think that's like the good thing about newness. I wonder what your response to this would be is like, do you try to write in different spaces still as often as you can, Tammy?
That's a really good question again. So I think like what I've been writing recently are more straight narratives. I'm really interested in cultural and social issues,
Mhm.
and I take on what I consider to be hard issues, and I leaven it with humor. And so I find that interesting, you know, to have a command of that. But I feel like I'm switching back to more of an experimental kind of writing. So still dealing with, and so now rather than confinement, my subconscious seems to want to talk about death. And so I'm still, I'm dealing with, I'm writing a play about death, but it's more experimental. It isn't like the narrative isn't, like a commentary on social things. It's just it's about death, but it's experimental and weird things are happening. And I kind of really enjoy that. I
Yeah.
enjoy that a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so I
How
think
does,
I think it moves. I think it's like
yeah,
waves. And I think
yeah.
you're at like the precipice
Hmm.
of a wave has come up and it's coming down and you're trying to move in a, like consciously, you want to move into a different direction.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. How does it affect your writing? Like when you're switching genres or switching like these foundational things, like when you talk about confinement and now you go to death, do you do you notice your approach being different or the same, like to kind of starting whatever this conversation is?
Well, I think it's what we started talking about. I think beginning as a writer, I was much more willing to experiment and much more subconscious about my
Mhm.
writing. And so that's why it was just, consistently about confinement and how to get out of the
Yeah.
confinement. But I think as I've gotten older and, I've started talking about death, I really feel like, my interest in death is much more conscious, much
Mhm.
more like I'm just not throwing stuff out there, not knowing what I'm doing. But I feel like though, however, I didn't select that subject, if that makes sense. Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
the
sure. Yeah, yeah.
transformation, like I didn't,
This
like
came.
say,
Yeah.
okay, I'm going to write about death now,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
So
I know what you mean.
yeah.
Um, do you think how do I want to phrase this question? I really want to ask you if you think you could have written about death at a much younger age, like or much earlier in your career.
Um, yes, but I feel like it would have been really superficial. Like I feel as you get older and you start to lose people,
Mhm.
um, I think it's a much different. I just yes, I could have written about death as a younger person, and it could have been fabulous. But for me, just me, I don't think it would have been. But I just think living and losing people and yeah. So
Yeah. It's an interesting topic. I don't know if I've thought I guess, I mean, death is not too far removed from me, you know. I see my grandmother, I see both my grandmothers all the time. And they're both you know, one's 95, the other one's 86, I think. And
So that might mean you might live a long time.
hopefully, you know, like hopefully.
Hope
And
so. Like I would.
yeah, and yeah, with my older grandmother, who I would generally assume would leave Earth before my younger grandmother, she had like this she just had like onset of dementia like pretty acutely, and I would say like the last like year or so.
Mhm.
And I've always heard stories about people who, and to be fair, much younger. We'll say like maybe in the 80s, maybe late 70s, start to see dementia start to onset with their parents. So maybe that experience in and of itself is different. My grandmother has been very sharp up until about 93, 94. And it did not make me sad at all. You know, there's like some moments where I'm just like, oh, like what a bummer. But it almost makes me appreciate. It's like, well, this is the end, but you're still here. You know what I mean? Like it's almost like she's in a certain way she's gone already. You know, like
Right. Right.
I saw her
Exactly.
a couple of weeks ago, and she literally told me she's like I recognize your face. I can't place you. And I was just like, oh, it's your grandson. And she still knows she has a grandson. You know what I mean? But like everything else is gone. And I'm just like, but how it's kind of like for, I guess, well, I can't say it's kind of like, but in a way, I align it with the idea of meeting like a great grandparent that you never would have met before, you know what I mean? And wondering what they're like, you know, them not being conscious of your own existence, right? And that's kind of what
Hmm.
I'm dealing with now. And I'm kind of like, what a beautiful experience because again, I know my grandmother. I know there is a possibility to trigger a memory of me with her. You know, I'm not going for that, but it's a possibility. She does remember things, but I also get to experience this person that like has been an influential part of my life, but like just approach it in a different way. And it just again, it makes me think about death and like a completely like more of stages in this just immediate thing, you know?
Right. Right. And so do you think part of it is that you get to sit there and look at your grandmother without her going, what?
Yeah.
You know, what's going on? So
Yeah, yeah.
it's like more like you get to see like really look at somebody without
Yeah,
them.
no.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to what you just said is what I was trying to describe about like, you know, meeting a grandparent in your dreams or whatever and not it's like, yeah, it's like I get to interact with this person for me as my grandmother, but also as a person I can just get to know. You know what I mean? Like in a different way. She's just going to experience me in a different way. She physically cannot treat me like her grandson anymore. She doesn't know who I am, you know? And so it's a very interesting
It is
ex
interesting because you know who she is.
yeah,
And
exactly.
then uh so my parents didn't have dementia, but I have friends who have parents that have dementia. But sometimes, like I think you alluded to, they kind of wake up and know
Mhm.
who you are for a
Yeah.
brief moment before they go back. And that's really interesting, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. So I don't know. Like I said, I think of death in a completely different way, and it's been in my mind. I don't write, but I try to like express my thoughts via Instagram usually, and through with my in concert with my imagery. Um, and I know I've written about it before, but it'd be interesting to see how, like, if I were to look back and see how I approach that topic, you know, over and over again.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. I remember when I was young, like in my 20s,
Mm,
and I was laying in bed, and then I just like started shivering because I
mm.
had the recognition that I was going to die. You know what I mean? Like that moment when you realize that you know you're not going to exist
Yeah,
forever.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like this is it. And
Yeah.
so hopefully I've kind of evolved from that
I
point.
wonder that's so I so I've kind of accepted that and I remember learning in like a human development class like the human brain just kind of has those modes already programmed into it to like, you know, like kids fear death, right? You know, they there's not something that can really comprehend and as you get older you just accept it that the brain is programmed to allow you to do this. And and so, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure it informs a lot of, I don't know, every way you express yourself, really. But oh my gosh, Kaylee, what do you got? I'm formulating a question, but
Well, I just started thinking, well, because we're talking about death.
uh,
And what's interesting is my grandmothers are both still alive. One I don't really have a relationship with, and the other one, she's hanging on by one eye. And she's had a really wild life. She was like a drug lord in Orlando in the 90s. I'm not kidding. And
I believe you.
Like a drug
I
lord.
know, and my great uncle, because all the elders are kind of still kicking, but like I came early to very young parents. So I spent a lot of time, like the first 12 years of my life, with my great grandmother. And that was like Madonna was bad because she liked sex. And like I was taught some interesting things. So I was thinking about that, and then the way, like, I've never experienced dementia at all with family members of my own, but yeah, like friends of family. Um, but I was thinking about how you went there, and then I was like, when I met you, this is super sad, but remember Mariah Wilson?
Oh yeah, you're talking. Oh, sorry, you're talking about me. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was like, no, I don't remember.
yeah. There was this girl who was a fantastic gravel racer. Is that how you would
Yeah,
designate her?
yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And
this.
she was 25 years old. She was like coming up through the ranks of gravel racing, and she was like crushing race after race. And she was down in Austin, Texas, and she took a ride with this dude who was in bikes, and his on again, off again
Came and killed her.
girlfriend,
Mhm. Yeah.
partner, whatever, basically shot this girl, Mariah, and killed her. And that was crazy because that was like right when I was coming into the bike world, and I had just met you, Cree, and I had met her, and she was like, "Oh yeah, she won that race." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
Um, and she was so young to like to be such a bright and shining like star on such an upward trajectory, to be like her life
Yeah.
taken like that was like, obviously, and a girl I worked with was a close friend of hers. And I think I still have the voicemail on my phone of her being like, I can't work for the rest of the day. My friend was
No.
just shot. And you're like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I wrote a piece for Specialized about in memorial to Mariah. It was like the only thing I feel like I did when I was there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
So how did it change you though?
It made me realize that no matter how good of a person you are,
Mm-hmm.
people will still function from a blind rage. And
Uh,
I don't know the span of the blind rage. I don't know if it's in a moment. I don't know if it's last months or years. I think it's different for different people, but I don't know, like all the goodness in the world can't cancel out the evil.
no.
Right. And then a really good person dies, and
Yeah.
yet we have these really evil people that seem to live hundreds of years. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah,
Yeah.
The
exactly.
girl who did it went on the run, got plastic surgery. Where'd they find her? Like
Who is this?
South
Costa
America.
Rica?
Her name's Mo Wilson. If you type in Mo Wilson, it'll come up.
Okay.
It's international.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, in the theme of like, existence and not, right? It's just like one of those things where that is just not a redeemable factor for whether you're on the planet or not. You know what I mean? Like you can be, I remember a 6 year old, or yeah, we were in like first or second grade, and I remember just getting these flyers and like seeing this girl's picture all around school. And I was like, what happened? And I think this girl was in my class. But I just didn't know her in the class. And obviously I was so young. Like, we'll call it between like first and third grade. And my mom was like, oh yeah, that girl died of leukemia. And I was like, but she's only a kid. You know what I mean? Like, why do kids
Right.
die so much? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
how's
Yeah.
that possible? Like, that doesn't make sense. But when you kind of think of like being on this rock, that's literally the most that you can really value any type of life, right? You're a thing on this rock and it spins, and good things happen and bad things happen. Like we don't, I mean, yes, I love animals, I love wild animals, but I don't cry when I see like a lion eating a zebra. You know what I mean? It's not, it's part of the thing, you know, and like when looking at life that way, that's why like the whole story with my grandmother, it's like death is the part, right? Like life is like the rare thing, and like everything's gonna die, and like you know, you just don't get to be here forever. But to transition that a little bit, how does writing about any topic, like where are you at, I guess, emotionally or just state of mind when you're writing? Like when you're writing, are you in it? If that makes, are you experiencing the writing? Are you experiencing the message that you're writing?
No,
Storyline?
I mean, no. I feel like like I know some writers who all they think about is writing, writing, writing. I
Mm,
mean, this is what I'm writing, this is what I'm writing.
mm.
And I feel like my thoughts are much more mundane, you know, like, am I going to wipe down the counter, or can I take the dishes out, if that makes
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I really trust myself when the time comes that I'll be able to write what I need to write. I don't know if that answers your question, but I'm not the type of writer. I never do outlines ever. I find those really boring, and I have friends, really good writers, who
Mhm.
make outlines of plays and then they write. And you know, this is not an original thought, but I find it much more interesting as a writer not to know where I'm going or
Mhm.
what's going to happen. And then I want to ask you if maybe that's with your photography, is that you know where you're going. And maybe that's, yeah,
We're
where,
gonna this is the topic when I said I'll bring this back up. Like I will hit you with this other question in a second, but I'll answer your question first. Um, what you were just describing to me almost reminds me of street photography. In street photography, like if you don't have a camera in your hand, you walk past a stranger, that guy is at the market, whatever, whatever. But the second you pull out your camera with the intentionality of photographing these same mundane moments, then you find the beauty in whatever these same mundane moments are. It's like I don't remember where I was talking about this, but it's like you see two people crossing in a photo, and if that photo is really good, it might be burned in your mind, and your mind might draw an association between these two people who probably never even remembered they crossed each other, right? You know, like the reality is they were just experiencing their own individual lives, and a photograph just so happened to like create this world, right? And so I think I gravitated towards street photography first a lot because it is very representative of the type of person I am. I do like a certain amount of, I'm not necessarily describing chaos, but I do enjoy a certain amount of uncertainty. You know, I do enjoy just like making nothing
yeah,
compelling to
yeah.
a degree. And and so now that I'm in this world where things are just more determined, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I I know that subconsciously I probably am struggling with that concept a little bit of like I can't just go out and just shoot and to you know support myself financially, just go out and shoot and make money. Like I can like there is a way to do that, but you know what I mean? Like in the space that I'm currently at, it's not the way it functions efficiently, you know. But when I'm working like on set, like on the day of the shoot, I'm finding a space in my mind where I can say like, okay, everybody, like I'm working now. I'm just gonna shoot. You know, even this last shoot where I had like very prescribed details to capture, I still was able to tell them like, okay, but I'm shooting now, and I will just make what I make, and we will hit these targets for sure. But it's not in like some like do this, do that, do this, do that, you know. So yeah.
So do you find your art is better though because you have those restrictions? You know, like the cliche, like if you're given parameters, it actually, when you know, you're forced to be creative in a way
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
maybe you
You
wouldn't.
have to be more creative with the limitations, right?
Yeah, whatever that is. I know that.
Um, I don't think that influences I can't recall a moment where that has actually influenced my work for the better. Like, you know,
Interesting. Yeah.
um, at least in my personal idea as like the better. I've definitely made good work in those environments, but I still think like my best work is just like nothing. Where's my camera? What am I pointing it at? And that's all I need to know, you know.
So let me ask you this. So it sounds like you're, you know, like you have a business and you have a schedule, and like, you know, you have to make a living. But is there a time outside of that scheduled time where you could just grab your camera and walk around San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Yeah. I do it all the time. I do even that in itself is kind of like in a more prescribed way these days. And I think that
Ah, that's interesting. Oh, okay.
that is really kind of just because of my schedule. I get really busy this time of year. We're in March, and this busy time of year will take me all the way till April, or I'm sorry, September or October. And so in that time, like what you just described, that's like my training, right? Like that's like my like if what I'm doing, if every shoot is like the game, like the little pockets of window where I can like recover and grab my camera, that's like my training where I'll just go out and find something to shoot. And I pick like different things. A lot of times, whether I have my camera in my hand or not, I'm looking for like light scenarios and things that are just interesting. I feel like I'm the kid who used to flip through a catalog, like rapid fire flip through a catalog, and when something jumped out, that's what I stopped at because I was like, if you just go page by page, then everything can be interesting, right? But if you
Right.
like thumb through it and stop because you think you saw something, that's the real interesting thing. That's the thing that stood out, like quite literally. So I'll walk around and try to find that in real life, like and just be like, oh, like why am I looking at this thing? Like, what is interesting about this?
That's so interesting. So
And
that's what makes you stop.
yeah, and so I will use moments like that to inform like approaching photography and finding new things and doing that. And I can do the cool thing about that is I can do that with or without a camera, or with or without like my actual camera. I can use my phone
Right.
for reference
Right.
if I need to, or whatever. I do that a lot with textures. Like if I see like I'm in Atlanta right now, and some of their like light poles have this like really cool decay on it, and I was just like, oh, and it's so beautiful. Like it's like this like decay that I've never seen on any of our street poles. So
So a different place.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, just like different environments and stuff like that. But yeah, I think ultimately though, and I just don't know what to do. I mean, life and art do kind of represent each other or mirror each other at that time.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So something's going on, some sort of transition.
yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, I like I haven't done this for a long time. I went 9 weeks without writing.
Whoa.
And
So
normally, I mean, that was like a huge amount of time and it started affecting me. So I, I drew the correlation because my thoughts were getting darker. I was much more judgmental of people. I was just, it was really affecting me. And but once I started writing again, I thought, it is such a privilege to be able, whatever art form we do,
hmm
it is such a privilege to write, to be a writer. And so it feels like to me, I don't know, it feels like you're in a transitional period in your
Yeah, and I totally am. I
yeah,
feel like
and that's all right. And
yeah.
that's all right. And it might not be really comfortable and you might not feel, at least I'm talking about myself. I didn't feel great about myself because I was just like, I'm so dark right now,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
dark.
Yeah, but that's it. That's what I'm saying. It's like you're going to go through transitional periods, right? Like even in just like your career, right? Even if you're trying to elevate
Mm-hmm.
your career,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get to that point where you're like, I'm still doing everything I'm supposed to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't feel like the movement's there. But I
Right.
know that if I keep doing everything I'm supposed to be doing, the next thing will happen and I will be aware of it. I will be conscious of it and I will celebrate that if that's what I want. And that's why I feel like I am. Like you said, it's just that transitional period where I'm just like, I'm making work. I know it's good. And I know where I want to go next. And it's just like that waiting period and the actual like time on the clock, but also that waiting period and like you're still processing, you're still creating stuff and you have to continue, to get there.
Well, and that's interesting because then you think, well, is there, so I'm evolving and I'm doing this, but is the external world, are they receptive to what I'm doing?
Mhm. Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you care about that
No,
part? Like, how
never.
do you
Yeah,
even?
I mean, I do, but I wanted to to tell Kaylee this. I mean, I've had plays that I've written like 10 years ago, a decade ago, not get a production for 10 years, Like, so it just, time is really weird as an artist.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So I'm gonna hit you with this question. It might be a little bit late, but I posted this on my story, and I feel like you'd have a good answer to it. I was saying that I felt like life had just come off like this narrative mode, the way I was experiencing life. Like I was doing something and it was just all kind of part of like a certain type of path, right? Like all these decisions and life just kind of felt like it set in this, not right in a bad way, but you know what I mean? It just set in this channel and was going expectedly. And now I feel like for the first time in a long time, not that it's unfamiliar, but it's just been a long time. And I think this is the first time I've consciously noticed it, is now I feel like life is day to day. You know what I mean? Like it's just like each day is almost like a la carte, you know, like something's just happening day by day. It's not necessarily, nothing feels like it's part of this select, you know, decision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, how do you feel like life is going? How do you receive those experiences?
So that's really interesting because I feel like I'm like a pretty cautious person.
Mhm.
And so I like what you're talking about is just, you know, life, you're checking off all those marks and it's, you know, doing all these things. And then suddenly it veers off. And I feel as a, you know, more of a cautious person, I really don't like that. But I feel as a an artist, it's really necessary. So
Yeah.
this a la carte that you're experiencing right now, it's really necessary for your art. And maybe, you know, if I don't, you know, obviously I don't know you that well, but if you're a cautious person like I am, like it's like, whoa, what's happening? It's like
Yeah,
there's
yeah,
something
yeah,
being thrown into the stream,
yeah.
you know. It's like so it's all right to have, I feel like, you know, conflicting emotions about certain things.
Mhm.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think as an artist, I think it's really important.
Yeah.
I think you should be thrown off your path.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you have to accept that too, that like what it looks like to keep going it looks different when it's like a la carte type
Yeah.
day, you
Right.
know, which is like my whole life right now. It's so fluid, like with my schedule with my daughter, and then I'm teaching online. So it's like not even a real world, you know, it's just like the internet. And I don't know. It's interesting because it's like I'm like I should be so thankful for this time to write and to exercise when I want and to get sunlight and to like, you know,
Mhm.
create. And then it's like other times it's like I'm not being productive enough. Oh my gosh, I slept too late. Oh my gosh, I did this, I didn't do that. And it's 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 funny how too much freedom can almost be debilitating
Absolutely.
because of the like external expectations that I have internalized about what it means to be productive.
Sure.
When I'm like, oh, actually, for me to like optimize my value as a human, I need a lot of rest. Like that's
Yeah.
real.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, I can feel deeply because I sleep a lot, you know, like I need those things,
Yeah.
but there's not a lot of acceptance for it. And I think even the way Christopher was describing the like, well, there's time within time where he can explore these things. It's like, oh, it's art under capitalism, you know? Like,
Yeah.
where do you, I don't know, it makes me think of, and I don't know who this writer was either, actually. I don't know if it was Jane Austen or who wrote Orlando?
Oh,
Virginia,
she's the one that died by suicide that put rocks
yeah,
in her.
Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
Like they would be like writing on scraps of paper at like dinner tables full of people, you know,
Yeah.
just to, like just to keep the momentum going
Mhm.
within the expectations of like all of what society was like pushing down on them. I don't know. I
Yeah.
feel like that's where I am as an artist. It's like, oh, well, the reason you haven't succeeded yet is because it hasn't been a priority yet.
Well, no, but then you're putting that on you. And so then my question to you, Kaylee, is what are your expectations with your art from the external world?
I want people to be like, she says some profound shit. And then I want them to buy my books of poetry. I want them to like, I want to have enough. I want it to create enough of a life where I can continually dip into the stream of creativity and keep that momentum going. And like, I just want to live a creative life and it to be enough. Like, I
So,
don't need everything.
but when you say you want to live a creative life, is that like external validation that
Right.
I guess because I'm internally living a creative life, but
Absolutely.
I think I
Absolutely.
realized that in the last, like, you've probably seen a lot of, you both have seen a lot of this out of me. You guys have seen me like kind of ripping out of a little bit of a cocoon. Like I look kind of crazy. It's okay. I'm cool
Mhm.
with it. But yeah, it was like I think I realized that like I have a very deep internal sense of loneliness. And because I don't authentically express myself to the people around me, then it's like, well, that's why you can't find your people, you know, and like, and that they create that safety for you to be able to create and be more of who you authentically are. And I'm like, oh, I think I realized it a little bit late, but I did everything I could to like hit the mark of expectations for an
Mm.
external world, which is why I think
Hmm.
I pursued the degrees through rhetoric, because I was like, oh, well, I can think deeply, but I can think deeply about like the rhetoric of science, which is very rational, you know, but like that's not who I am deep down. Like I'm just like a puddle of emotions and I just want to be swirling around in them and that's where I want to exist. And that's absolutely unacceptable, you know, from where
But
I
unacceptable to whom?
to my parents in the back of my head. Which I've moved through that, but it took a long time, you know. It's like, oh, well, now that you
You,
failed,
you'll get rid
failed.
of your parents. I
No,
mean,
no, no.
in the back
They're
of your
still
mind.
there. They're
I
still there.
mean, yeah, they'll show up occasionally. Um, so I just wonder, because I've read some of your poetry on Instagram, and you're a really good writer. You're a really interesting writer, and there's so much pain. I mean, there is so much pain, and I just think you should. I think you should keep doing it because it changes you internally, if that makes sense. It's
Hmm.
like makes Kaylee. And I just know from experience, like if you're looking for external validation, it may
Yeah.
come a decade down the road, you know? But
Which is amazing.
right.
Like the instances you see of that in the world, like I love for like personal experience, like when Stevie Nicks is really doing her thing and like belting her heart and pain out. I was too young. I probably wasn't even alive yet. I don't actually know the years of the songs that hit me in certain
I think
times.
in like mid 70s.
Okay, so okay, I was not here yet. Cool. But like now at a maturing age in my life, like the resonance in her voice, and I'm like, yes, I needed this. And I
Hmm.
see that again and again, like when I I feel like I've only just discovered Mary Oliver.
Hmm.
And like, it was like, what is it you plan to do with your one?
This wonderful some life.
Like
It is a wonderful life. What do you want?
aspirin.
This
Your
one,
one wild
yeah,
and whatever
wild,
life.
wonderful life or
Which is a
something.
great quote and it's like
Yeah.
broadly quoted. It's lovely. But it's like there's so much depth in her poetry and what's interesting is I've never been a fan necessarily of nature writing. I'm like, dear God, this is boring. But as I get older, I
Hmm.
start to like, oh, the way you describe the ripples of the sunlight on the river is so beautiful. And the way you pay attention to the loon in your backyard every morning at 4 a.m. Like, damn, that is the shit that really gets you going in life. In the end, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm revealing
Yeah.
too much of myself. But
Well,
Exactly.
Kelly, what do you get from your writing though? That's like the thing I feel like is like how does your how or not even your writing, yes, but like how is like your form of creativity serving you?
So was this question? Question was for Kaylee, right?
I mean, you can answer it too, but
No, no,
I'm
no, no,
asking
no, no. I want
Kelly
Kaylee to
directly. Yeah,
answer this
yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah.
it is for me so
Sorry,
that
I'm gonna pause you
it
really quick. Like, like serving you directly, and I'll only give you an example. I feel like photography has literally allowed me to emotionally communicate something that I wasn't capable of doing before. So like I could say all these other like very fantastical things about how photography has influenced my life, but I'm asking like, what if that Kaylee knows that maybe we probably would never know? How is your creativity servicing those components of your life?
I think I'm not sure where this space comes from, but there was some aspect of my childhood that made me feel like I was a really bad person for all of my
Mm.
childhood.
Hmm.
So when I write from the pain and the depth of my emotion now, it's to honor the way that I feel in ways that were invalidated at a younger age. And I think
Mhm.
that that's probably what even informs like the expression of my voice in those moments is because I can like reach back to those
Mhm.
times of being silenced. And so it's like I want it what it does for me is to say something in an articulate and direct way and maybe even slightly offensive sometimes. Like so that other they don't do that to other little girls, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. Are you
Mhm.
You
saying
know?
are you
Thank you.
saying you still possess these emotions now, or you're just kind of recalling on them like retroactively? Like, are you still experiencing these emotions, or it's more memory?
Both, I guess. Because it depends on, a lot of times like the agency of creativity for me, it's almost like the more I open myself up to my imagination and my internal world, I began to see the value of myself as like I'm like I'm way more interesting than I give myself credit for. And I'm always like seeking outside of myself for and I'm like let down a lot, and it's like because I don't honor the internal tapestry. So
Mhm.
in an effort to do that, that makes the agency of creativity come more quickly because I'll just have like a random funny thought and then I'll be like, oh, let's take that thread and let's write a couple lines. And so it's like sometimes that thread that I pulled out of thin air, which is like a lyric in a song or something I saw in an improv bit, like sometimes that opens the door for that little girl back there, but sometimes it doesn't, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has it changed you? Allowing that reaching back to that young child, that young girl at this age,
It
because
validates my whole experience,
okay,
I think
yeah.
because like there was a lot of trauma there. I had very young, they're still here, very young parents. And my mom was like a raging alcoholic for
Mhm.
till I was 30. And my dad was married my mom's best friend when I was like 6 months old. And then he's like in the military. So in my mind, he's like this military hero, but really he's just some fucking guy in Texas with a different family. And then like most of my upbringing was like both of my parents, like, I can't take care of you. I can't deal with you. I can't hold space for you. I can't show up for you. Like they didn't go. And it was why I didn't do things, It was like, so it was like, how do I get the love? How do I get the love? How do I get the love? And I think now it's like you just give it to yourself. They don't understand you. They may never understand me.
They're never going to understand you. So
Right.
how do you? I mean, like, how do you approach that? They're never going to understand you. You know.
Well, I think it comes down to eventually you're going to understand you.
Right.
And
Is
when
that
you
what you're
understand you stop looking for that validation and you hold empathy for the experience that you've had, which allows you to then
Exactly.
hold empathy for the experience of others because you're like back to the foundation, you might be retilling that earth, but you're creating better crops in the future because you've taken the time to excavate your own experience.
right?
Right.
That's more important than anything. And I think that that's like the root of what art is the ability to excavate your experience so that you can hold empathy for yourself and others.
Are you actually finding those answers via your writing?
For myself,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Then
a
there,
lot,
then you
it's
don't need any external validation.
Exactly.
You know,
That's like the
you
whole
don't.
point,
I
right?
mean,
actualized.
right.
Actually, this is what it looks like.
Well, I
Yeah,
mean,
job.
that's what we've been saying the whole time, right? Is like your creativity. I think when you're really like achieving, my girlfriend just came home, but I remember we were at a restaurant or something like that, and she works in the arts and stuff, so like there was a gallery opening right by the restaurant, and she's like, oh, you want to just pop in? It's like, yeah, sure, it's right here, why not? And we both walked in and we're kind of like, there's no soul in this. And it's like, and neither one of us are these types of people, you know, where we want to just like poo-poo on like somebody else's work. I think if you're creating something cool, like you did do something, but it's just like there's no real way to find via the art this, not everything has to be on the nose, but this discovery, right? Like what am I'm not being challenged, you know, and challenge doesn't have to mean you're thinking about all this like political stuff, whatever, but like you can see somebody's art and you can see or feel the statement. You know what I mean? Like you can hear it in the music, you can hear it, you can see it in the paintings, you can, you know, you can see it, you can read it in the writing, like you can feel the experience, and then sometimes you see art and you're just like, oh, yeah. And like
Yeah. Do you think it's like an energy thing? Like such a focus kind of energy? Like, I don't know, it's weird. It's just to me, it's like it's hard energy when you
yeah.
come up. It's not like this diffuse kind of anyway.
Yeah. I know what you're describing, and yeah, it's funny because like that hard energy is what garners the least reaction from me, right? It's
Oh, interesting. Okay.
it's just like it's so loud or whatever. I don't know.
Oh, so that's really interesting. So I'm not talking about like loud, but just like it can be a really soft painting like the Impressionists, but there is so much, and I'm using the wrong word, I'm trying to capture the word, but so
Yeah.
much energy or so much focus or so much something life.
I feel what you're trying to say too. But I guess what I'm saying work is like there's like I don't know, it's like play it's like there's no harmony to the work
Yeah.
in terms of like I have a background in music too, so sometimes I will reference sound quite often. But like yeah, there's just like there's no harmony, and you can, and again you can see that when you experience, it doesn't have to be world changing work, but just like good work, meaningful work, you know, work with a purpose has a harmony to it, and work that doesn't have purpose just there isn't that harmony that just comes from good stuff. And again, it doesn't mean that good stuff does not mean that I like it, you know what I mean? That's completely,
Yeah.
it's just like
Yeah.
I can tell what's like what is meant to communicate and what is just like slop on the wall, you
Slop
know.
on the wall. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay. Can I take a bathroom
Go
break?
for it. Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. All right. So Tammy, we have some questions for you.
Okay.
I would like to know how you found yourself on this path of creativity. I mean, you have what, 61 plays in production now?
Um, over the years. um,
She's so elusive with the numbers and
yeah, that's
she's like,
right.
you don't have
You
to
weren't
Google
supposed to
me
do
if you don't
any
want to.
background research, Kaylee. I was like, no, don't.
It is fun to go in a little blind, but I have been, since I first met Tammy in our improv class, we took a level 2 class at Rise together. It was a crazy class. And it ended up with just being 4 of us at the end. And so
And
Tammy
so
and
we were so good. I mean,
yeah, we were so
yeah. And
shush,
I just and I'll answer your question, but I remember so this was like the third or fourth class, and I walked in and I really didn't know Kaylee. And I'm like, why is she smiling at me? So I think I did one of these looking like I couldn't like your smile was just like I don't know, it makes me tear up. It was just so infectious and so genuine. And I think that's for me kind of like the base, you know, it was like she is actually smiling at me. So anyway, I really appreciate that.
thanks.
So okay, so how did I start? So this was many years ago,
Give us
youngsters.
a year. Give us a year so we
No,
can.
I'm not going to give you a because that will really date me. So I had this great friend that was like in his early 30s, so like 33, and he'd been an investigative reporter. He'd gotten his graduate degree, you know, from Columbia, and he was like this really kind of like stereotype, raspy, you know, just really aggressive kind of person. But he had this really aggressive cancer. He'd always had the cancer, but then it really came back. So he was kind of in home hospice with his sister. And so I went to visit him, and he was very ill. And so I brought him like this squirt gun, like just to be, ho, 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 this is so funny. Here's the squirt gun. And he just looked at me like, what the shit, what is this? And so I thought the next time that I visited him that we should work on some sort of project. And I had been reading about the Eugene O'Neill Center that has playwrights. It's a conference. And I thought, well, Larry and I can write a play together. So so I had a project, because he was a writer, obviously a really good writer. And so we just started writing characters back and forth, writing this play. And it wasn't finished because he passed away. But I really thought, I really like this art form. And I know at the beginning of the conversation, I talked about outsider art. And I feel like that's how it was for me for many years, because I like this. I like writing plays, but I didn't know how to write plays. Or, I didn't have any theatrical background or, so anyway, that's my story. So
Yeah.
shout out to my friend Larry.
So it started in death.
Yeah, exactly.
Yourself here again.
Yeah.
So interesting.
What
I
was
wonder if like the agency of energy of like his spirit is still with you, right? Like, oh no, you're on this path now. It's all you, baby.
But he was so wonderful. He was so irascible, and he was dealing with this illness for a long time, but he was such a funny jerk, if that makes sense. So, and I'll never forget when I brought him that squirt gun. It's just like, dude.
And then, did you finish writing that play?
No, because he passed away.
And then,
but I was hooked.
And that's
you
what
were like, I'll do another one.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
What was the component of playwriting that you really felt connected to?
So I feel like I tried to write short stories, and I wasn't very good at writing short stories with the descriptions and stuff like that. That I actually was a better writer, because I felt at the time, and this has proved not true, that it was much easier just to write dialogue. Sure. And so that's why I did it. Sure. I felt like it was easier, but it's not.
Yeah. Is it just you felt like just two characters or multiple characters speaking to one another was interesting to like kind of create?
Yes, absolutely. And then what you start to learn is because it's a visual art also, is the spatial aspects of it. So you start to see the scenes, the costumes. It's a three-dimensional art form, very transitory, but it is. Yeah.
I've never even really considered that. Yeah.
What part does like music play in that?
Well, that's so interesting, Kaylee, because I know you're a big music fan, and it doesn't play any part for me.
Well, we did 48 Hour, and then the advice I'd gotten from the former executive producer, she was like, you should use something open source. And she was like really interested in us using like Mickey Mouse footage from the 20s. And I was like, these aren't the things in my trunk.
Yeah.
Know that reference? Did you just laugh like you know that reference?
No, but I understand what it's supposed to mean.
Oh, okay.
But the great thing about playwriting is you're collaborating and with sound designers that are capable of coming up with the music or the sounds that you need. So yeah. I feel like that's my deficit. I feel like, Kaylee, you need to train me about music.
That'd be funny. Well, we ended up using an open source. We used Gene Autry's Home on the Range.
Yeah.
One of our main characters sang it, and they like warped the audio, so it was super eerie because
it
was basically like human trafficking HOA guy. Kind of is. Did I ever show you that short film, Christopher?
I know enough about it, but no, I don't think that you shared a link or anything like that with me.
I'll send it. It's really good. We got second place and
Yeah, no, it
second
was
place.
so much
to
I thought you
compete
guys had won a win.
nationally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was,
And it was a gorgeous house we were able to shoot in, right?
yes,
Like,
thanks to
you know
Kayla.
where my old place downtownish City Park was? It was like 2 blocks up from my old place. Like,
Oh,
it's
sick.
like really nice. It was so gorgeous. I was like,
Yeah.
this woman has to be like a retired ballerina or something.
Oh, on
Yeah, that was the energy of the house.
is that the east side of the park, the north side? I don't even know. Whatever. It's that main drag that goes off one side of the park. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same
No.
side that, yeah. I forgot what we were talking about.
Well, you're just asking her about our place, but I have a like, is there a play that you've written that you felt like you when you wrote it, you knew that it was just really strong and something that you just really enjoyed?
Yeah, so recently, so my play, Jeremiah, which was about young boys and guns,
Mm.
I felt like it was a really good piece. And again, it's what we talked about. Like, it was a pretty straight narrative, leavened with humor because it was a very hard topic. But yeah, I kind of knew it. But it's like what we talked about at the beginning. I mean, there are times when I write stuff and I think it's really great and it's really not. And then stuff that I don't think is that great
Yeah.
gets some traction. So yeah.
What?
It's almost
like
like
as
you're
a
not.
So it would be an interesting conversation. I know we've been, but as an artist, I think sometimes we're not really good at judging our own work, if that makes sense. And why
Yeah.
why aren't we able to judge? Sometimes we are, but why aren't we too close to it? Or I don't know.
Mm.
Yeah, I saw this thing that said it was Rick Rubin again. Like the audience comes last. I guess the last thing on his mind.
Sure.
And I thought that was fascinating. And I'm like, but unfortunately, because capitalism exists, you're like fighting to get to the not caring part.
Yeah, that's always, I feel like that's always on like the production side of things, right? It's like the creator, the actual creator on set or whatever. Like you unless you're going into the project knowing that the audience matters first, right? And that's like when you're writing for like a TV show or something, right? Like where you're just like they're just gonna spit, whatever. But like when you're not on that production side, where you're not looking at metrics before you make the thing,
Right.
you're just creating, like the audience always comes last.
It does in a way, but they're great collaborators.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Like they're really necessary.
Yeah, because that's how you, and to an extent, it's how you measure like the whatever conversation that you're having. It's like are people understanding it, whatever. And I get that part too. But in the act of like inspiration and just the creating.
No, I never think about them.
Yeah, you can't do that. What does it feel like though when you do feel like you're on the mark? I'm very curious. Like, is it that you have this emotional connection to your work, or you just like what are you feeling when you're making work that you just know is strong?
I think hopefully you always have emotional connection. It's like what we talked about, like like it isn't purely intellectual, but an emotional connection. And then people are also having an emotional connection, and that really resonates with me. That matters. More so than when I was younger, actually. So
yeah, that's great.
What does it look like when you're like walk us through production, like idea to ideation for you, because you are so seasoned in this at this point.
So I have an idea, and then it's like anything, like you market it or you apply for things or you compete for certain things. And then if it's accepted, it's purely, it's still a collaboration because you're working with a producer, and the producer has ideas. Like you do a table read, and then they have ideas, and you go and you rewrite, and then you have another table read with maybe the actors that are going to play the parts and stuff like that, and then they're able to contribute what they think. I mean, I'm always really open, and if it's really good, you have like what we talked about, like the sound designer, you know, you have the costume designer, you know, everybody's there, and then they take that piece and they put it up. And I'm not the type that likes to be involved that much. Like initially, I'm really fine with being involved and doing the rewrites and stuff like that, but I'm not going to be at every rehearsal. I mean, I just like that. And so like you go to the first night when it opens. I always go to the first night, and then again, because of my personality and who I am, I have no interest in like going to any other shows until closing night, because then you can see like hopefully there's some sort of arc of growth. And yeah, so it's a really it's like improv, which is really interesting, and I think that's why I like improv. It's a really collaborative type of art. You know, you release it and you trust, you know, that your partners are going to, you know, do the best they can with it. So
I I could assume that a play does have a few different identities, maybe between opening night and closing night. Is that a decent assumption? Like, does the play tend to evolve over the course of its
yeah, it should, but sometimes it devolves in the
Sure.
sense that sometimes it's like the actors are so used to the lines, and so they don't, you know, they don't take the lines in as much, and so it's more like
Yeah,
what. It's like, well, I liked it better at the first start because they were trying to understand, you know,
yeah.
the lines, or you know, as characters in the lines.
Which then goes back to like the depth of the idea, right? So then if when the actors are bought into the idea, it should get more rich with each performance.
Right. And a lot of times it does. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it should. Because that's why they're doing it, you know, as an evolution for themselves. Yeah.
The biggest stage one of your productions has landed on.
So that would have been in New York at the Brook Theater. Yeah. So it was a full length.
That is.
No title. Just a play that so happened to be there. Had my name on it.
Yeah, yeah. So that was my biggest. That's been my biggest. But that's not to say that the stakes aren't high in Denver, because I feel like they are high because you're with your comrades, so to speak, and people that know you. So yeah.
What is the culture of playwriting in Denver? Like what does that look and feel like?
Well, I think when I started, the entree to enter into it was pretty easy. I feel like, as you know, lots and lots of people are moving to Denver. And so the critical mass has made it so there are so many talented playwrights, so many, you know, people that have come to Denver. So it's more competitive. And I think with COVID, that a lot of theaters have shut down. So I would say right now, at this moment in 2025, it's more competitive, uh, less easy to enter the community.
Yeah. What's your favorite theater in Colorado?
Catamounts right now. So they're out of Boulder. And so the new thing with theater is immersive theater. And this is where the audience gets to participate to a certain extent. And I think she does a really good job with that. So Catamounts for sure.
And what is immersive? Like what does that look like? I have no
So that's
idea, but
that's like you're outside and you're going around and going to certain stations and stuff like that, and the actors are sort of interacting with you. And they're so good, you know, it's like improv, so they're interacting with you and you feel like you're a big part of the piece. And for some people it feels like it's more authentic because they're in, you know, this kind of theatrical piece. And that seems to be really big right now, immersive theater. People love it. It's really selling.
I
Well,
wonder why they love it.
Um, my theory is that because of computers and, computers responding to us, we get immediate response. We're part of it. We're part of, games. We're playing games online. I just feel like it's computers. I don't know.
it provides like a almost more unique experience in like what you can like, or maybe like a higher sensational experience.
Yeah, 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 totally.
That's cool. What does like a good play consist of? And I know we've kind of answered this question in many different angles already, but like whether it be one of your works or just any work, like what are you looking for in like a good play?
So I think it has to grab you emotionally and then surprise you. And for me, I'm going back in that direction where I think it has to be kind of a non-traditional kind of narrative. We started talking about narrative, um, something that's interesting. So I think plays that are just like blah, 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 and it just, it's like a TV sitcom,
Yeah.
I think are so boring. I think they're so absolutely boring.
Yeah.
So, but emotion, I would say emotion. It has to grab you emotionally.
Keyword of the
Yeah. Yeah. Keyword.
Will you tell us a little bit about your writers group that you've been with? Because I think this is like a
So
very
I
fascinating.
think eventually down the road when you interview like other artists and stuff like that, and you want to come to me, I can offer you a really fabulous playwrights. So one of the playwrights that is in my writers group is Ellen Graham, and I consider her to be one of the best female writers in Colorado. And then Frank Oterio, who's down in Pueblo. So he's like a vet. He's like a, but he's such a fabulous writer. It's where your personality, well, I hope he doesn't see this, but where your personality doesn't really match your writing. And so it's just three of us. I've been
Yeah.
in larger writer groups, but this seems to work. Yeah.
How does it function?
What?
How does it function?
So we meet like every 3 weeks,
Mhm.
and we just read each other's. So it's like if it's my turn, I'll submit a script, and if this is like a second go around, they'll look at my first go around and compare it to the second go around, and then we'll just talk about it. So it's different from a lot of writing groups, playwriting groups, where a lot of times they have actors in who read the parts and stuff like that, and it's just like segments. It's not the whole play, but we are looking at the whole piece. Yeah.
Sure. That's cool.
Yeah.
And you guys have been writing together for like 20 years?
Well, not necessarily with Frank. I've known Frank for a long time, but with Ellen, I would say since 1997.
That's wonderful.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, how did you guys find each other? Was it, I mean, and
Well,
also like, how did you create that commitment over such a long period of time? Because I'm like, I feel like you could accomplish anything with that kind of writing group.
yeah, it's had different. Well, so with Ellen, she was part of the Women's Playwriting Festival, and I actually was reading scripts. I was a co-producer with the other producer, and so we were reading scripts, and I came upon her script, and I said we need to produce it. It was a one act, and it was this Women's Playwrights Festival, and then I thought she was such a great writer, and so I asked her to join this playwriting group that I was a part of at the time. And then with Frank, I've known Frank over the years, and I've gone to his play readings and stuff like that. And he was part of the DCPA, which is a big deal playwrights unit, but he didn't actually get to do it because of COVID. But he's just a really marvelous writer. So I feel very privileged, lucky, and it's I mean, you could start your community, I know yeah, you just do it.
They're around, they're here.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
so as a concluding question here, we wrap it up, I gotta go pick up soybean. What do you see for the next 5 years in your writing? What do you want out of the next?
That's a good question. I think I'll just see where my subconscious takes me. I don't know. I never have a game plan. I mean, I'm able to reflect on it after it's happened, but I don't know. I know I'll just keep writing and I'll see what happens. Yeah. Yeah.
It was a pleasure. I wish we had more time because there was like, of course, more questions keep coming up as you speak, but it's been a pleasure. And you asked really good like follow-up questions.
Oh, but I found both of you so interesting. So that's selfish. I'm selfish. I wanted to hear more about both of you. Yeah. Thank you.
That's the way a good conversation happens. So anyway, it was a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Yeah. So thank you so much. This was great. I guess I didn't need to be worried, right? It's like,
not at all.
I'm like cheat.
Was there anything on your cheat sheet that we should have hit? Did you have any?
No, I think we hit it pretty much all of it. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.